Welcome back for another episode of the podcast. I'm super psyched to have you here again with me this week because we have a very important topic to talk about. Today's topic is how does porn deplete dopamine? So we are going to dig into your dopamine supply and what it does for your brain and your life. And we're going to talk about four main things. Number one, what is dopamine? Number two is how porn use depletes your dopamine supply. Number three is how you can replenish your dopamine supply in your brain and why. And number four is how can you avoid porn-induced dopamine depletion in the future and forever, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's dig in. Number one, what is dopamine? The conversation's so important because dopamine is a very important neurotransmitter in your brain that is associated with motivation, learning, and pleasure. And I like to call it the pleasure-seeking neurotransmitter or the seemingly pleasure neurotransmitter, because basically when you were very young and you found pornography and masturbation, what happened was your brain exploded in a rush of dopamine. Dopamine is what made you feel good that first time. And we know from the science that the first time you found porn and masturbation, it was likely the biggest dopamine rush your brain had ever felt. And your brain recalibrated its levels of dopamine and what to expect based on that first exposure. And the younger you were, the more your brain had to figure itself out. Because of this super normal stimulus of porn, more dopamine can be found in the screen from pornography than can be found in nature. It's a supernatural, super normal stimulus. You can't find that much dopamine naturally in the world. So what happened was on that first exposure, your brain's like, what is going on? And it recalibrated itself into something called neo-homeostasis. Homeostasis is your baseline operating mode of your brain. So when you were young and if you had healthy brain development, your brain's moving towards developing in a beautiful way homeostasis to keep you alive, keep you feeling well, keep you calm, focused, growing up, and your brain developing as it should. Now, enter porn exposure, and your brain has to recalibrate itself because of this massive amount of dopamine, the motivational, learning, pleasure neurotransmitter. And now you recalibrated to neo-homeostasis. Neo-homeostasis is these new levels that expect this new rush of dopamine to feel good, because in that moment, because of dopamine, your brain was taught that there's these really high levels of pleasure, where if you weren't exposed to porn, your brain would have been used to having to go to work in school and get an A and get some dopamine there. A's equal a little bit of dopamine and that feels good. Or you see a little cutie at school and you're like, oh, she's cute and she gave me a smile. Dopamine at normal, natural levels. Or you go snowboarding, your favorite hobby, and your brain is cranking because you feel so good because you're out there doing your hobbies on purpose. Those are natural levels of dopamine. Porn, supernatural, and now your brain wants it because dopamine is the neurotransmitter that motivates you back to a behavior for pleasure. It teaches your brain that's where the pleasure is. It's the pleasure-seeking neurotransmitter. So at healthy levels, like I just explained, in homeostasis, your brain is taught and motivated to go into your world, to work and get on purpose in work that you love. It's taught to build connection with other people who make you feel good. And it's taught to go do the hobbies that you love for a balanced, well-rounded lifestyle that gets you the perfect amount of dopamine from many, many, many activities that round out your life. But then when porn entered the scene, it hijacked that homeostasis and it created neo-homeostasis. So now your brain is taught, I go into the screen and I get a ton of dopamine fast. Easy button, baby. I just hit that easy button. I get more dopamine. Why would I ever go to work and have to take those little tiny steps on that project for the next 6 months to culminate in that project? That's not enough dopamine for me. That's what the hijacking of the system does. Why would I ever spend all the energy to try to meet that cutie and make her my honey and go through all the effort of developing a partnership and then having to negotiate that partnership to have a healthy sex life? That sounds like a lot of work when I could just hit the easy button and get all that pleasure. And why would I ever buy a snowboard and put all that winter gear on? Trust me, I know. I'm from Buffalo, New York. Why would I suit up for 15, 20 minutes when I could just hit the easy button and I'm going to feel twice as good as I ever possibly could snowboarding? It's because the reward system and the reward circuitry in your brain was hijacked by that supernatural, way too high level of dopamine, the motivational, pushing you back towards a behavior, pulling you into the screen, teaching you that there's pleasure in the screen and to keep coming back for more at higher and higher levels. Now, unfortunately, that neurotransmitter, once that reward circuitry is hijacked, it becomes insatiable. And the porn industry, they are not fools to this. They set porn use up to take advantage of this. Remember it. So if you feel like, whoa, I keep getting sucked into greater frequency and consistency and especially intensity, that is not on accident, my friend. That's by design. It's not a multi-billion-dollar industry for no reason. But I digress. Let's move on to number 2. So how does dopamine get depleted from porn use? So I just told you in this new neo-homeostasis state, your brain is getting tons and tons of dopamine. I call it the dopamine deluge. So the minute you have the thought you're going to watch porn, you'll feel it in your brain. You feel that little ping in your brain? That's a dopamine drip. And we know from the science that when that drip starts dripping, it will lead you towards the flood, the deluge. You're pulled towards the deluge. Your brain's going, give me all that dopamine to take me away from all of the pain and stress and boredom and anguish of my life, which we will get to that in a minute. That anguish is created from the dopamine deficit that porn creates from the dopamine depletion. But let's stick with the deluge for a second. The deluge, which means flood, is the flood of dopamine in your brain. And when it's flooding out the system, it is desensitizing the reward center. So that's why you need higher levels. And just like any other addiction, there's withdrawal if you try to walk away, but there's tolerance building. You need more and more to feel the same that you did a while back. So your brain builds tolerance and you continue to flood out the reward center and to desensitize those reward nerve receptors. So you no longer feel the same amount of pleasure with the same deluge. There needs to be more and more of a flood. And in doing so, you are producing just so much dopamine in your system that it will deplete your system. You're using it all up at way too high levels, damaging your brain and depleting your system. And the goal is to feel good. And then ultimately, after, you feel all numbed out. That numbing feeling is the depletion of the dopamine. You feel good because your brain is so fried, it can't feel bad. And in doing so, you've depleted the dopamine system, numbed out. Now, when I work with people, I see it in their brain graphs. And I'm digressing here for a second, but if you want to see your brain graphs with the Muse headband, get the headband. It's an amazing tool. I don't sell it, but on my website, there's a web page. You can go to the web page on Brain Training 101. You can purchase the headband there with a 15% off discount. And actually, somebody just emailed me that it's on sale, so they got even more of an epic discount using that link, and they were able to grab the Muse for a really great price. So go check that out if you're interested, because you can see your brain graphs, and I'm going to be covering more and more brain graphs in the future. I just recorded a short podcast with Zach Carter, the coach who works on my team, and we were looking at his brain. But what I can see in people's graphs is their brains are artificially calmed down. They're at really high levels of calm, except for it's porn induced. And that's what the dopamine depletion looks like on the brain graphs. So if your brain is 98% calm, yet you haven't done something healthy to calm it down, but instead you've consumed pornography, you're frying out those dopamine receptors. You're creating the deluge, the flood, which creates the depletion, which is leading you, unfortunately, to the dopamine deficit in your life. So when you flood the system, it creates the depletion. Now, stay with me. We're going to move through to number 3, which is how and why are we going to replenish the dopamine supply? So follow me first for a second. We're going to go from dopamine depletion to dopamine deficit. So we know this again from the science that then when you're not in the screen and you're not consuming pornography, and especially after you've had a pornography session, what happens is your brain hits this low state of dopamine, the deficit. There's no longer healthy levels, there's low levels from the depletion. And the twofer of this terrible situation is there's a spike in cortisol, the stress neurotransmitter. So now it's time to go to work, and work stresses you out. Not only is there not pleasure because you've taught your brain through dopamine, the motivational neurotransmitter, dopamine, the neurotransmitter of learning and pleasure, you've taught your brain that pleasure's in the screen, that there's no pleasure in your life, deficit. So work is not pleasurable anymore. Your relationships aren't pleasurable anymore. You wonder why your partner's so annoying? It might not be your partner. It might be the dopamine deficit. You wonder why you can't muster up the energy or motivate yourself to go do your hobbies anymore? It's not the fact that your hobbies got more boring. It's the fact that you've linked your brain through dopamine to be motivated to only go to the screen. You're no longer motivated for work, relationships, and hobbies because you've depleted the dopamine and you've created the real life dopamine deficit state. To me, it's tragic, and that's why I'm here, because it ruins your work and it makes it no more fun to go to work, and you're off purpose. No purpose, no meaning. We know that. It ruins your relationships. You can no longer feel the connection and the intimacy and the love and the joy and the laughter that you could if you were in a dopamine rich state in your life. And your hobbies, the cool things that you like to do that were divinely inspired within you, you're no longer inspired to do them because your neurological circuitry has been hijacked by dopamine into the screen. So, how and why to replenish? The solution lies where the problem is. The problem is you've taught your brain through dopamine that pleasure's in the screen and is no longer in your life. So, the solution is reteach your brain, rewire your brain to find pleasure in the world through dopamine by rewiring this circuitry to get back into your life for pleasure. So clearly you need to put up a fence so that you do not go into the screen to consume pornography, because it's a loop. You will not be able to get out of the drip, deluge, depletion, deficit loop of dopamine. So set up a fence, get a blocker app. I'm partnering with Remojo, which will be offering their blocking software for free, which is amazing, and it's an awesome tool. And I've partnered up with them because it is a great tool. And then they are now offering it for free. It's Remojo, Remojo. Go check it out. I have a course inside that app that I have offered people to help them rewire their brains. Put up your fence, stay out of the screen, get over those cravings and urges so that you can stay away from the screen and start unwiring this whole loop of dopamine. And now here's the real kicker. Get into your life and force yourself to do the things that you know you love, but you forgot that you love. You've got to find the dopamine and retrain your brain that dopamine's in your work. So find your favorite part of your work and go do it today. And then high five yourself and give yourself a treat for doing it. double dopamine, right? Dark chocolate with sea salt. Actually, I've been trying to eat even healthier. I've been eating very dark chocolate, 90%, with just a little peanut butter. That is delish. Train your brain. Chocolate's very dopamine producing. So if you eat very dark chocolate, it doesn't have the sugar. And it's actually very good for your brain and your gut. So dark chocolate on top of work that you love, high five yourself for getting into your work and retrain your brain that there's healthy levels of dopamine there. And then you don't need that massive flood of dopamine anymore. But that's going to take some recalibration again. Remember that, because your brain recalibrated itself when you were young to need these high levels. So if it doesn't recalibrate overnight, you got to keep going at it and keep retraining and rewiring. Go spend time with your honey, or go spend time with your friends, building intimacy in the real world. Teach your brain, I'm not going into the screen for fake intimacy and high levels of pleasure. I'm going into the world for real intimacy with lower levels of pleasure that are good for me, and retrain my brain back into the world to be with people. Take your honey on a date. Zach and I were just talking about this, and we were saying, we say to people, when's the last time you took your partner on a date? And they're like, never. Actually, I was thinking about this for myself, and the hubs and I actually have a lot of staycation dates at home, and we go out a decent amount. But I was thinking, because I've been working a lot, my kids have a lot of things going on. I'm like, dang, I haven't done anything that dopamine producing this week. And the formula is do something that's dopamine producing as often as possible in your real life. And of course, I get a lot of dopamine from my work, so that's really cool. I do get dopamine from hanging out with my kids. We were just doing totally weird things a little while ago. We've decided we're going to watch the Hunger Games trilogy. And my son Declan put the Hunger Games tunes on, and everyone's being weird and laughing and enjoying ourselves doing nothing, which is a wonderful thing. Dopamine from those connections. Go do that. Go do something weird with someone you love and laugh about it. It'll be amazing. And go do your hobbies. Get out there, do things that you love to do. It's going to feed your brain the dopamine that it's looking for. It's going to replenish it. Here's some other. I'm going to give you the top 5 that I talked about in a video I recorded just the other day. Top 5, exercise. We know that exercise is very dopamine producing, so good for your brain. And all the neurotransmitters that are healthy for you get cranking, and they're increased through exercise, and it decreases cortisol, that stress neurotransmitter. Exercise. If you remember nothing else, go out and move your body. Do body weight training and some cardio. And the hubs and I were doing this yesterday in the kitchen, just being weird, where he started jogging in place, and then I matched his tempo, and I'm like, you psyched right now? And he just drops and does some push-ups. I drop and do some push-ups next to him, and it wasn't even a workout, but it was like a 7-minute thing of cardio and body weight training, and it's so good for you. It just juices up the system and you get back to your life. So good. Exercise. But if you can get outside, sun is very dopamine producing, as is nature. So exercise outside. Eat healthy. So even if you just get used to not eating anything out of a crinkly bag, and a go-to is bananas are higher in dopamine, and nut butter. So peanut butter is okay, but almond butter might be better. That's protein and carbs, and it's keeping your system stable, and it's giving you a nice little hit of dopamine. Hug someone. Physical touch is shown to be dopamine producing. I went downstairs out of my office, and my son Seamus was sitting down there, and of course I jump right on him and give him a hug, and I touch his foot, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm giving you physical touch to give your brain dopamine. He's like, fine, but don't touch my feet. So cute. So, but he didn't say don't touch me, right? There you go. So there I sat, rubbing his knee and giving him a hug, for like 2 minutes, until he was like, get off me, woman. Physical touch is very dopamine producing. So hug somebody. It's amazing. Go do it. Okay. So we also know that hobbies, like we already talked about, getting out into the world, physical touch, and getting that dopamine from your real life is so important. Music is another way. I crank the tunes up all the time. Music's very dopamine producing, so put music on in the background. Cook dinner, food is very dopamine producing, and spending time doing nothing and letting your brain come down. What we're talking about is bringing your brain out of mini fight or flight into that calm focus zone. That's why we see it in your brain graphs. So just go into your world and find as much dopamine as possible, because it keeps you out of the screen and it replenishes that dopamine supply so you feel great in your life and you no longer need to go into the screen. Okay, number 4 is, how are we going to avoid the depletion from pornography, dopamine depletion, ever again? Clearly, the answer is clear. You have to break the loop and not go into the screen. The more you go into the screen and at higher levels, the more dopamine depletion you are inadvertently doing to your brain. Remember that. So if you can't stay out of the screen, let's cheat in the right direction. Make it quick and fast. If your brain is just jonesing and you need a hit, because this is like, it's like medicine, right? It's like the naughty water, as Russell Brand would say. So if you need it and you can't stay out, make it quick and fast on your way to staying out of the screen. The longer you consume pornography at high levels of intensity, the more you're depleting your system. Cheat in the right direction if you have to. I don't love that as a strategy, but if you have to, it's going to be a small win in the right direction, and there will be less dopamine depletion, less dopamine deficit in your world, and less dopamine to have to replenish and make up. But the way to avoid this dopamine depletion is staying out of the screen and retraining your brain. When I say retrain and rewire your brain, this is what I mean. Reduce your stress in your life. Stay out of fight or flight. Reduce stress. Look at everything you've got going on and try to take the stressors off your plate. And I know that can't be done because I have 6 beautiful children, none of which I can sell at this point. I said to my daughter Saoirse yesterday, we have 2 cats and 2 dogs. I'm like, dude, I am a nut job for having 4 animals to have to take care of, because they're responsibilities. Pets are very dopamine producing if you don't have to take care of 10 other creatures all the time. But recognizing that, those are things on the plate. So when you put stressors on the plate, you can take some of those stressors off. And then secondarily, you have to balance those scales of justice. So as much stress is on your plate, that's how much stress regulation you need. So number 2 is emotional regulation. Make sure you have healthy ways to get dopamine and healthy ways to offset the stress of life. Go find those ways. Go exercise. Go for walks. Go for runs. Go for lunch with your friend. Then here's number 3, and then we're going to wrap up. Number 3 is healthy sexuality. You have to build a healthy sex life so that you're staying out of the screen. Now, porn really has nothing to do with sex in the first place. It has to do with dopamine for pleasure, but it's been linked to sexuality. So now when your system feels overwhelmed or fatigued or anxious, it's like, I could use some sex right now. And really it's just, I can use some dopamine right now, but it's linked to sex. So when you develop healthy sexuality in your life, first of all, you have an offensive method of being with your partner, or the potential partner that you'll find once you heal your brain, being with your partner in a healthy way that gets your brain lower levels of dopamine, serotonin for happiness and joy, and oxytocin for connection. That's really what your brain wants. It's been substituting high levels of dopamine since that neo-homeostasis was created. But in this rewiring and recalibrating, we're going for healthy levels of dopamine, healthy levels of serotonin, and healthy levels of oxytocin for connection. But make sure you have the opportunities for that in the world with a partner. Set it up. That's the formula for success. Okay, I hope that helps you out. And if you're looking for help on the journey, please reach out to me at info@drtrishleigh.com and at my website, drtrishleigh.com. And I was just thinking there as I was talking that I wanted to make sure that you knew that I'm building more of a team, because I'm trying to keep that healthy balance in my life that I can feel tipping the scales, like I told you last week. So check out the website because we're updating it. There will be brain check-ins will be listed on their own page. The Muse headband, I'm creating the web page right now. It's going to have its own descriptor of a page on how I use it and how it can be really powerful on your porn brain rewire. We are doing brain check-ins. We're doing full brain maps globally. So it's amazing. I've been working with a neuro coach, Curtis. I've been training him. He's been working with my husband for a very long time, and I've been training him to work with me for what feels like a long time, right, Curtis? Because we've been training hardcore, and we can offer brain maps because it was difficult for me to do that by myself. And now he's working with me, and I'm collaborating on every brain map. You want to know what your brain is doing? We're your people. So check for the brain map page on the website because it's going to be awesome if you want to find that out. And then home neurofeedback brain training, where I teach you, me and my team, we teach you how to use the Muse headband by yourself so you have a tool for the rest of your life. And we also offer premier neurofeedback that we combine together so that we give your brain a push in the right direction to recalibrate it and to rewire it as quickly as possible and gently as possible so that you can move through this thing if you're struggling. So if you're out there struggling, don't struggle alone. Those are top tier services, but I also have my lowest level in terms of financial investment program that thousands and thousands of people have called. It's the fundamental program. It's called Quit Porn for Good. So start there. And then in all the programs, you have the opportunity to move up. So don't struggle alone. Get into my community or somebody else's or the Remojo community so that you can get beyond this thing. Your brain deserves it and you deserve it too. So let's rock this thing out. Okay, until next time.